The fans were brilliant. Very few of them asked for any refunds on their season tickets. Jake came to me and said the players would accept a 20% cut. Players would be tested twice a week, £100 per player per test. The player's contract is nothing like the conventional contract that you get for doing any other job. The season after we got relegated from the Championship, we made a massive loss. So Manchester United let me use the boardroom. He said, "What's that, Mr. Chairman?" I said, it's a buzzard, Jimmy.
Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the In Brother Words podcast. We've got a very special guest today to tell us all about running a football club during a pandemic. It's the Burton Chairman, Ben Robinson MBE. Ben, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, nice to be with you.
Good. Thanks for coming on. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the football stuff, how have you been dealing with the lockdown personally, getting through these days?
Yeah, okay. I mean, go back to March and it's incredible, isn't it? You know, next month and it's a year, you know. And so I think like one needed to be philosophical about it, you know, and if you could be strong and you know, focused and accept that it's a terrible situation. But a lot of people out there are facing far more challenges and problems than I've had to face, you know, in their everyday lives, losing, you know, loved ones. A friend of mine who's an accountant sadly died of COVID recently, but he had some underlying health conditions, you know. So a bit of time, obviously, when we were locked down completely. I live in a lovely village, you know, with lots of walks, you know, in the forests and the woods and what have you. And also one of my pastimes was studying birds, right? Obviously the feathered variety, of course. And I remember Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, when he first came to Burton, and he was training up at St George's Park, and I very rarely go up there to watch them train, you know. Anyway, there's this bird appeared with a big wingspan above the forest, you know, and above the trees. And he said, "What's that, Mr. Chairman?" I said, "It's a buzzard, Jimmy." I said, "Have you never seen a buzzard in Holland?" He said, No. I said, "Well, I'll let you into a little secret." I said, when I was growing up as a young man, right, I two of the subjects that I studied was ornithology and oology. So he turned to his colleagues and said, "The chairman studies oology," you see. And obviously, he thought it was something. And I explained to him, no, I said, obviously ornithology, Jimmy, you'll know, is the study of wild birds. And oology is the study of birds' eggs, you see. So a bit of useless information for you there.
Yeah, keeps you busy.
So if we go back to March 2020 then, Ben, so the first lockdown, and the season for League One was then postponed sort of indefinitely, wasn't it, at that stage? So what were your first feelings when you heard that? And then also, how did you deal with the changing rules and regulations? Things were changing on a weekly basis at that point, weren't they, really?
Yeah. Right, okay. So as a club, we've got a very good, strong structure, you know, that's head and in tune with legislation and all the compliance procedures, you know. And obviously back in March, I think a lot of people felt that this was going to be a matter of a few weeks, you know, and then we'd be back to normal, you know. But we didn't take that view. We took the pessimistic view that, come on, guys, you know, this could go on for a long, long time, you know. So we set our stall out back in March in terms of looking at the potential financial impact on our business, you know. And so I, at that time, I had a dialogue with Jake Buxton, who was the captain, had a chat with him, and obviously we discussed the considerable financial pressures that the pandemic would bring to our club and to the sport, you know, with the prospect of no income from the gate receipts, also no income for the commercial activities, because obviously the commercial activities, I'm not just talking about sponsorship and advertising, I'm talking about seminars, functions, weddings, Christmas parties, all the events that take place upstairs in, you know, and in the great banqueting facilities that we've got, and obviously a contribution of the profit from those areas also supports the first team budget. So Jake was very good. He saw that the position that we're going to be in. So over a period of time, he spoke to the players and said to me that well, there was talk of should it be deferrals or should it be wages cuts, and obviously you probably know that the players' contract is unique. The players' contract is nothing like the conventional contract that you get for doing any other job. Obviously it gives the players a lot more security. It's clearly defined, in terms of employment law. And so after quite a bit of discussion, Jake came to me and said, the players would accept a 20% cut if I could guarantee for the next 4 months, so that was April, May, June and July, that they would get 80% of their money. And you look back at that time, there was a lot of uncertainty, about clubs surviving, about clubs being able to pay the players' wages. And that was the start, obviously, of our discussions. And then it was a question when the furlough scheme was introduced, obviously maximising the furlough scheme. Obviously, the government came up with loans which were interest-free for the first 12 months. So we took advantage of that. So what we wanted to do was build up a bit of chest, really, of cash to see us through this difficult period, and then moving on, obviously further down the line, well, certainly before the end of the season, the fans were brilliant. Very few of them asked for any refunds on their season tickets for the matches that didn't get played, from March to May, and then move on to the summer, and 2/3 of our season ticket holders renewed their season tickets, and vice presidents, on the understanding that I guaranteed that for every match played behind closed doors, if they asked for it, right, then we would rebate. And today, none of them have asked for any rebates. They wanted us to support the club. Okay, I mean, there's still time that could happen, but that was a great gesture by the fans. Similarly, our main shirt sponsor, Press Tech, they said that we'll continue to support you, Ben, even though we might not get to watch the games. And a number of other companies have also followed them and given us support, even though they're advertising, it's not being shown before the fans. Okay, it's been shown on iFollow for the games that have been screened, but not in front of a live audience. So.
Okay, and was in terms of all the new regulations that were coming in terms of the testing and things like that, was that all being channeled just to yourself, and then it was your responsibility to then filter that out to the rest of the club? How did that work structurally?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the EFL, the board, they decided that they wanted to introduce a testing structure, but they didn't want it to impact and cause any pressure on the NHS. So they went to a company who said that they could deliver the testing procedure for all the 72 clubs in the league, and at a cost. And I think at the time the cost was £100. I think £100 per player per test. That's how it started. Obviously, more recently, it's great to see the PFA gives their financial support to say that the players will be tested twice a week, and they'll pick up the tabs.
Okay. So last season then, for League One, I say it was postponed indefinitely, and then early June it was voted to end the season sort of early, and decide the final positions on a points per game system. So is that something that you were completely in favour of from the start, or was it? Because I know the timing of that in terms of it coming in June. I think that's quite relevant, isn't it? In terms of June 30th is quite an important date, isn't it? In terms of contract ends, and most clubs, their financial statements also end at that time as well.
Well, I think what you saw there was that no matter which procedure the EFL board adopted, they couldn't. It was impossible to satisfy every individual club's best interest. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, in that process, we saw, understandably, that certain clubs put forward their arguments, their interpretation as to how they would have dealt with the situation. And again, understandably, it was based on self-interest. The fact that, they'd look at the position and say, well, I get that. What's best for our club? Which scenario is best for our club? So it's a difficult decision, but I think the one that they came up with in the end was the fairest decision. And really, it didn't give them, there weren't too many options that they could address,
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the start of the season as well, the 72 became the 71 with Bury sort of being lower from the league. There's also the risk of Bolton going the same way. They were sort of saved at the last minute. So how do you sort of avoid becoming another Bolton or another Bury if you're in charge of a football club these days?
Yeah. Well, I think probably maybe if you look at the clubs that have sadly experienced extreme financial pressures, then invariably it all comes down to the inappropriate spend on the first team.
Yeah.
Having a budget that wasn't sustainable. I remember going back when I first got involved in my club in February 75 as a young director. I felt so privileged and proud to be invited as a 30-year-old to be invited onto the board as the youngest member on the board. Most of the other guys were a lot older than me. And we had a great run in the FA Trophy. In fact, Peter Swan, I saw, died recently. I don't really have followed Peter Swan's career at all, but very sad. Peter Swan was the player manager of Matlock Town. Mm-hmm. He used to play for Sheffield Wednesday, and him, I think it was Bronco Lane. They were playing for Sheffield Wednesday many moons ago. I can't remember the year now, but they were playing a team, I think, away from home, but they had lots of injuries, Sheffield Wednesday, and they felt there's no way they were going to beat this team, based on their injuries, and so they placed a bet on Sheffield Wednesday losing, right? Yeah. you want Google this, you'll see the story. Really sad. And of course, so Peter Swan, who was a great player, I think the court case surrounded the time when he would have, been a prominent player in the England squad, but that went all out the window because he was banned for life, signed die for life, Wow. And the thing was that I think they were going to win like £100 or something stupid, it wasn't life changing. It was just and I think the suggestion was that they were doing it because they knew they weren't going to get a win bonus or a draw bonus, okay, you can say, well, the rules are the rules, and the spirit is, why would you want to bet against your team winning no matter what the odds, and that was very sad. So he was the player manager for Matlock, and you'll see what I'm telling you this story in a minute. So we went over on the train to Matlock, and I remember sitting there. Obviously it's lovely Peak District country. And 1 minute it was on the hills, it was raining, and then it was snowing, and then the sun came out. Anyway, we beat them 1-0, and then in the second leg, like 2 weeks later at Eden Park, our old ground, we were all buoyed up thinking, we're going to go to Wembley. I mean, you can imagine a little club, Burton Albion. We'd be playing then in the Southern League, and we had people like Ian Storey-Moore playing for us, Peter Ward, Peter Ward who was sold to Brighton, and then Brighton sold to Forest, played for England. And we lost 2-0, right? And obviously that was a great lesson for me because I was so down, dejected, that I said I would never let a football result ever affect me in the way it did. And then the following year, I became the chairman when I was 31. And the first thing I had to do was to get rid of the manager, not because he was a bad manager, but because we couldn't afford him. And as well, we couldn't afford his team, because that team had been built up around getting to Wembley. Right, and had they got to Wembley, it would have been fine, but they couldn't sustain that team, and the club owed the VAT man money, they owed the tax man money, and obviously I had to restructure. And I got a playing manager, Phil Waller, that came in and cut the budget right back to the level that was sustainable. So I think the thing is, and obviously that's something I learned then, and that still applies now. I think we've had really one hiccup in all my time, really, and that was the season after we got relegated from the Championship. We made a massive loss, even though we had in the players' contracts the fact that they'd be the relegation clause. So if we got relegated, their money would drop. But we still had a budget that was too big for the size of our club and what have you, because that's one of the sad things, really, that despite the remarkable success that Nigel Clough and other managers have brought to the town and the team at Burton Albion, it's not always shown all the time, a massive financial reward. Now, let me correct that by saying that obviously when we played Manchester United, it did, because we earned an absolute fortune. It paid off the debt on the stadium, and so I think this is the thing, really, that obviously, particularly for new people get into football, who are businessmen who've not grown in a football environment, business-wise, then sometimes they get carried away and they give the manager too much money to spend on buying players and having a first-team budget, and don't get the success that they're aiming for. And then that's when there's a problem, when they can't pay their liabilities, that's probably that's where it stems from primarily.
Yeah, certainly a business unlike any other, isn't it? So you've been with Burton, like I say, for years and years, and you've seen them, the non-league club, all the way through to being a league club. So last season, and it looks potentially like this year as well, the non-league football pyramid was actually just voided, and the season was null and voided. What's your opinion on that? And do you see the non-league game as being sort of unsustainable in these circumstances?
Yeah, I think the thing is, well, it's ironic because obviously we in the Football League, we weren't able to have any fans in. And I was arguing, no, so smaller clubs, right, they can have, 300, 600 fans, and we couldn't even have 1,000. So I couldn't even try and compensate most of my season ticket holders, right? And we all know that obviously the protocols that we have to adopt, I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about match day stewarding and all the reporting and the procedures that we have to embrace, right? The non-league clubs don't have to follow. It's a lot more relaxed what they have to go through. And so I didn't get that at all, and I lobbied for that. And then we were going to have a game with 1,000 fans, and obviously the COVID situation got worse, sadly, and so the game was there was no spectators. Obviously, in the current situation, then I think obviously the government probably felt that having allowed the smaller clubs to have fans, I'm certain that there were instances where the social distancing probably wasn't applied as it should have been. And they've had some support from the government. I don't know whether the support that the government's talking about, I think the latest one was a £10 million package. I don't know to what extent, how much that would touch and affect individual clubs' financial stability. I'm not sure. But obviously it's a step in the right direction, and it should help them to some extent. And I think that's why you're seeing now that there's reluctance to let, any fans into elite sport, because we've seen the statistics. The infection rate was increasing rapidly, alarmingly. So were the people sadly dying, and all that was causing immeasurable pressure and heartache, for our hospitals. So, and the government didn't have a choice but to rein that in, and obviously to apply more restrictions. So that was important, and it is what it is, really, that we've got this vaccination come in, and I'm sure we hope eventually that will get to grips with the problem. But you just wonder, looking ahead, that maybe some people, some families, will take a different view, that they won't want to go out, amongst big crowds for some time to come, until we say, well, nobody's got it, it's not a problem. Nobody's got it, and everybody's been vaccinated, and therefore, we're living in a safer environment.
Yeah,
I think Burton will definitely reap the benefits of having such great facilities as well, because obviously the grounds, with it being so open, and so such a modern stadium for the league. I think you're set up nicely, aren't you, for when they do allow fans, back into the stadiums? Yeah,
we are. Yeah, because we are. It's only probably the two concourses that where the seats are occupied, to get access to your seats other than vice presidents. But here again, they're not. That can be monitored, that can be managed and marshalled, adequately. And like you say, it's a modern stadium, lots of space, and obviously we're delighted that we've been able to help the community by, initially having COVID testing here, and then obviously followed by the lateral rapid testing, lateral testing, and then since December it's been operating as a vaccination centre as well. And so I think they're now on to dealing with the people over 70s, and so that's working really, really well. And somebody said to me, I think it's so important that we built the stadium. That's why we built it, as a community facility. And I think that this sad pandemic is just proof that it's a focal point for the community. There's lots of space, big car parks. It's a focal point, and I'm delighted that we've been able to put that facility for free for the primary care trust, working with the NHS and the local GPs in East Staffordshire, being able to use it to have all their patients vaccinated.
Amazing, that's great. So just fast forward a little to now, so the present. Could you tell us just a little bit about what procedures are in place at the moment, in terms of match days and stuff? So how regularly are the players being tested, and also do chairmen, members of the board, etc., do they get to attend games, or is it strictly just players only at the moment? Yeah,
okay, right. So in terms of the first team are now tested on a Monday and a Friday, right? And those tests are taken to a point in Leicestershire by our staff, and then probably by tea time we get the results. And that's obviously the first team squad and the staff working with the first team. The County Council came up with a plan recently inviting major employers in the county to carry out their own lateral testing for free. So they would give you the kits, right? So our community trust, which is a great charity, does phenomenal work. They've been delivering all the support for the vaccination centre and the testing being done, through the NHS. And so we've got our own facility now. So our staff have been trained to provide testing, lateral testing for everybody else, all the office staff, everybody. And for example, tomorrow we're at home to Hull. And so everybody that comes in tomorrow is going to get tested, including all our board members, all 4 or 5 of them that's coming anyway. So, so in terms of attendance, I was driving down to Gillingham for our away match. I got a phone call from Paul Scally. He said, "Ben, I presume you've set up." I said, yeah, I'm probably about an hour away, Paul. And he said that that day he wasn't going to the game. He told all his directors that, in view of the infection rate down there, it was prudent not to go to the game, and that they wouldn't be going to away matches. And I get that, and I follow that, So, so as far as tomorrow's game is concerned, I've got two people from Hull. I think it's the chief executive and a commercial person, and then just probably 4 or 5, including myself, my home directors, but with no guests, our wives and partners, no family members. And then obviously a handful of press and a handful of scouts, and then the players, and that's it,
So if you've been still attending games, how have you found it without fans there? Is it quite weird?
Yeah, it's strange, really. It's it's strange, and it's if you think about pre-season friendlies, unless you're playing like Manchester United or Real Madrid, most pre-season friendlies are, I remember years ago at the old ground, probably 30 years ago, we played Nottingham Forest. It was a testimonial game as well, and we had quite a good support there, but and when you consider the Brian Clough bought the first team, Justin Fashion, he played for them, that's how long ago it was, with all the top Forest players, and supportive of one of our players, testimonial, and it was well attended, but it won't sell out, and so it's a bit like, I think, the pre-season games that, obviously it's part of a build to the start of the season. And so, you miss I've always felt that the atmosphere that the fans create, I remember at the old ground, we used to talk a lot about in the Northern Premier League, the teams coming from the north. The teams from the north, their support was phenomenal. They used to get behind the team, whether they were losing or winning, and then also the home fans. There's a guy who used to sit at the back of the stand, and I think that day the referee was Mr. Hyde, and he would quip to a game, well, we've got Mr. Hyde, where's Mr. Jekyll, and so, you've got this banter that goes on, which is great, and and of course obviously it's interesting, isn't it? I'm a chairman, I'm not a coach, I'm not a manager, but it's interesting how that affects a player's performance. Presumably some players do need a crowd, or need the crowd to get on their back to do certain things or achieve certain things, maybe, and but it's certainly very strange, very different, but obviously it's just something that is happening, and we just say, well, that's what it is, and there you go, so.
Yeah, well, we've probably should say that we actually have been to quite a few Burton games in the old era and in the new era. So our auntie Kate and our uncle Pete, we've got to give them a shout out because they'll be watching this.
Who's that then? Who's that? That was
Kate and Pete. They're big Burton Albion fans. Yeah. Their name's Wagstaff, and they're good friends with Phil Brown, one of the directors.
Yeah, I know Pete. Yeah, okay, yeah, because they they go. They're big friends of Phil Brown, aren't they? And his wife, and they go to.
We've been in Phil's box a few times, haven't we?
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. No, it's good. As a company, they've got Box 4, and they've continued to support us, with advertising and what have you, and sadly, you see, because the other thing as well during this whole scenario is that, and that obviously when the time restaurants could open, and pubs can open, and or say pubs could open if they serve food, and sort of we argue, well, we've got all these boxes, what's the difference really? They're restaurants, you know what I mean? And obviously we never got to the point where they could come in, have a meal, draw the curtains, saying, what's the match on the telly? We never got to that point. That's what we were hoping to achieve. Something never happened, so. Yeah, no, so you've been here. Did you ever go to the old grounds?
Yeah, so we watched a few games at Eaton Park back in the day, in the sort of Darren Stride, Aaron Webster, that sort of era. We actually went to the two Man U games you were talking about, and then new ground as well.
I can tell you our first game was the goalkeeper called Duke at the time?
Matt Duke, yeah.
Yeah, he scored from a goal kick, didn't he? You remember, Rob? That was our first ever game at Eaton Park, the old ground.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I think it'd been Nigel I think it was Nigel Clough as a manager then, wasn't he? And I think we played Barrow somewhere, and as it said to me, you know Neil Warnock very well. Can you ring him up? So I phoned Neil, and that's how we got Matt Duke on loan. You know, that's how he came on loan. Yeah,
Amazing.
but no, I mean the obviously football creates some fantastic memories, and I've got some great memories. You know, meeting Pele and what have you, watching him play with Eusebio back in '66. You know, but talking about Manchester United, I remember when we played Burscough, didn't we, in the second round? Do you remember? And they were the smallest club left in the competition, right? And we were in the conference then, weren't we? Football conference, yeah. So every Sunday, my mum has passed away, sadly, who I owe so much to. I'm where I am today, down to my mum's hard work, and also my stepfather, Frank, who she married when I was 7. And so every Sunday I go and see her, have a tea, and on the game on the Saturday against Burscough was cancelled because the pitch was waterlogged. So I said to my mum, I said, Mum, I said, it's coming up on the television, and there's going to be the draw. And then she fell asleep. And when she woke up, I was able to tell her if we beat this team on Tuesday, excuse me, getting a bit emotional at that, that we were going to play Manchester United, you know. And so we played Manchester United on the Sunday, 4:00 kick-off, live on Sky. And I remember there was a problem because some of the Manchester United fans, they owe me a call, but they managed to produce some forged tickets. Remember that?
No.
Yeah.
So I got called away to go behind the goal where the Manchester fans were. And there were some youngsters, really youngsters, and they were in tears and they were really upset, you know. Anyway, listen, there's only a handful, and so we got them in another part of the ground. But and I said to the steward, "What's the score?" And he said 0-0. You know, I was expecting him to say, "Well, we were losing to whatever," you know. So I mean, it was a remarkable performance. And then and David and Goliath, wasn't it? And then Mr. Ferguson, who's a great ambassador for small clubs, you know, and what have you, a supporter of. And then he chose to bring Rooney and Ronaldo on with 35 minutes to go, you know, and then we managed to hold out. You know, it was a tremendous performance, and Nigel could put that team together, and obviously he created a great team spirit, you know. And then, of course, in the replay, a Wednesday night, again live on BBC. Remember the first game? Ken Merritt was the secretary. And you have to agree the date of the replay before an FA Cup game, you know. You see, and I said, replay? What do you mean? I said, you know, we're going to struggle to beat you, the team, and your resources, you know. And he was talking about the importance of the date of the replay being on the television, you see. I said, well, I thought you only got on the television when the producer thought that the chance of an upset, you know, so... Yeah, and so it just tells you the mighty pull of Manchester United worldwide, doesn't it? You know, what a product that is, and that if we managed to get a draw, then the replay, even at Old Trafford, was going to be on the television. You know, and so we took 126 coaches to Old Trafford, 11,000 fans. They had to keep extending the allocation, you know, and I think it's still a record there under those circumstances, you know. And okay, I think we lost, was it 5-0 or something? But you know, it was a great occasion. And I recently attended, or a few months ago, just before the lockdown, I attended the funeral of Bill King, who was the chairman then of the conference and went on to become the president. And in the eulogy, he said that he remembered the day Burton Albion played the replay Manchester United because they had a football conference board meeting. So Manchester United let them use the boardroom, right, for their board meeting, and then they'd entertain them at the game. And also, I think I had 10 directors then, and they allowed me to invite the wives. All right, and they gave us the boardroom, and they were amazing. The hospitality and the warmth, the friendliness. Because it's been said that occasionally in football, sometimes the bigger clubs, there's a bit of elitism, a little bit of snobbery, but they were wonderful. It's amazing, and they got their photographers to come and take pictures. So we've got some fantastic memories, of those two games that obviously we've been sharing, with our grandchildren.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. So I think what we'll do is we'll ask you our final question, which is what we ask all our guests. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give?
I think nothing's changed there, really, because I was brought up. I did an interview recently for Repton, Repton School, yeah? Well, not the school, but the village of Repton. They've started their own radio station. And that was going back to my school days, starting my school days, business, school days, business, and football. And I think basically it's nothing changed, really, which is, your parents bring you up to work hard, to be honest. And I know, listen, in business, everybody in business, I use the term ducks and dives. I'm not talking about cheating. I'm talking about ducking and diving, with effect, not being dishonest or cheating. And have that ethic, of working hard. And because I think what I've said to youngsters is that, you know what, if you believe in yourself and you work really, really hard, not just today, but each and every day of your lives, then, almost anything is possible to achieve. Those goals that you set, if you work hard, but treat yourself in that time, then, and listen to the people around you, that as mentors that have been there, experienced it, and they can share with you their experiences, the mistakes they made, how they dealt with them, how they reacted to them, and also as in life you learn all the time. You never get to a moment in life where you don't want to take and accept new knowledge, and that's important. That we every day we can learn something new in our lives, and never get to the point where we've learned everything, and we stop listening to other people around us. So, absolutely.
Amazing. Right. Well, thank you for that, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on.
We'll have to invite you when we can, and then we can catch up. And lovely to see you again, both. Okay. You take care.
Super. Thank you, Ben. See you later.
Thank you very much.